Shaner.
Aye.
Scott.
Aye.
Waters.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
O'Kane.
Aye.
Move we adjourn the closed session. Second.
Scott.
Aye.
Waters.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
O'Kane.
Aye.
Shaner.
Aye.
Call the roll, please.
Waters.
Here.
Moore.
Here.
O'Kane.
Here.
Shaner.
Here.
Scott.
Here. Can we stand for a moment of silent prayer followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, please? You're here for the Native American Month proclamation. Come on up. Early, and you weren't late. You're right on time. We were just early last week, so sorry about that. It reads, whereas the Native community of the Sioux City has worked tirelessly to advocate and raise awareness about injustice happening to the Native people in child welfare, juvenile justice, and the adult court system. And whereas the Native community in Sioux City has sought to bring about change in regard to peacefully and prayerfully exercising their constitutional right to assemble and to voice their desire for change in how they are treated. And whereas the Community Initiative for Native Children and Families will begin their 22nd annual Memorial to Honor Lost Children with 2 days of educational events on November 25th and 26th, and will embark on the annual Memorial March to Honor Lost Children on November 27th, 2024. And whereas we support the commitment of the Native community in their continued efforts to focus on building bridges and fostering understanding, we thank the Community Initiative for the Native Children and Families and all the individuals and organizations responsible for holding the Memorial March to honor lost children and wish them much success. Now, therefore, I, Robert E. Scott, Mayor of the City of Sioux City, Iowa, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim November 2024 as National Native American Heritage Month, and do further proclaim November 27, 2024 as the Memorial March to Honor Lost Children Day. I'd like to present this to you guys and say a few words if you would.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor Scott and City Council. I'm Karen Mackey. I am co-chair of the SYNC committee. And the other people here today had asked me to be the person to speak. I've been involved with this for about 20 years, so I saw where it started much more as a protest. And now it is a prayerful march, memorializing and honoring the children who have been lost while in the foster care system, but also trying to educate people. I just came from a first aid course for youth mental health issues. And so we're having training again tomorrow. If any of you have any time and want to stop in on that, please do. And then Wednesday, our march starts at 8 o'clock at War Eagle, and there are different prayer stops along the way: Rosecrans-Jackson, Urban Native Center over on Geneva, the courthouse, and then the convention center. You don't have to march the entire 5 miles. You know, if you want, you can just come to a prayer stop and participate there and then leave, or you can participate in some of the march. But we'd encourage you to do whatever you're able to. And thank you very much.
Can you let us know about roughly when you'll be at the courthouse? Do you know?
Well, theoretically, what is it, 11:30?
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly around 11, 11:30.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yep,
Thanks.
thank you. Thank you. Okay, Robert Dandran. Oh, there he is. Didn't see you there. How you doing? Tell us a little bit about why you want to continue to serve.
served the past couple of years on the board and tried to share some of my experience. I have been in the electrical field of this town for a long time, since '95. Business owner and master electrician now, and just want to be able to share my experiences and help the city continue to grow in proper ways, so.
Questions? I appreciate the work you're doing
Thank you.
and
Yeah.
serving, so thank you. It's very important that we have that committee, and I think you just have added a whole lot to it, so thank you.
We'll try to.
Thanks for making time.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Also, thank you for your other community involvements that you have listed on here.
Oh,
The Boy
it's-
Scouts,
yeah.
Home Builders Association, Electrical Contractors of Iowa. You know, all that takes time out of our busy life balance, and that's great. You want to add this another year or two or three, or I don't know how many you guys serve actually on this one, but appreciate that.
Everybody gives a little, it makes everything better.
It
so we
does,
just gotta
it
try.
does.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
Yep.
Bob, take care.
Thanks.
Yep. Thank you.
Tricia, come on up. Tell us why you want to continue to serve.
Oops, hello, sorry, I just kicked the podium. I would like to continue to serve on the Inclusive Committee because it's something that I deeply care about, especially when it comes to inclusive matters within our community. I just love to be in the public policy arena, if you will. I've had an honor to coordinate some of the kind of bigger events with Sioux City. Recently was the White House listening session, and how to really bring everyone together, from different sectors. And that's really what the point is to really open those doors for others to be able to thrive in our community. And I'm just all about the community, really honestly. For Sioux City, almost half of our population is very diverse. So I would really love to see that continue, and I really would love to continue to serve on the Inclusive Committee. So, any questions?
I appreciate your continuing.
Thank you. I do
There's
appreciate
been a
that.
lot happening, and there's a lot to happen yet.
Yes. But I think that's the most important thing is, yes, there are a lot of things that do happen, but we all have to work together to make that happen. So definitely learning, uncomfortable conversations, of course, but we all have to move together to make that happen. So that's why I want to continue. And, I speak from my heart. I really do. I'm not afraid to stand up and speak up. I like to just really, just stand in my truth, but also, sometimes, speaking up can be challenging, but I do love to do that. So
I
Well, it'll
like
be tough for me to vote because you got that Northern Iowa shirt on, and those women beat my Cyclones over the weekend, but
oh, yes, and I forgot to mention, I'm actually going back to school to get my Master's of Public Policy. So that's really how committed I am to really bringing something forth to this community.
Dan should be, because he's the big fundraiser for it, but the Northwest Iowa League of Cities has a scholarship for local citizens that want to go into public service, and you should apply for that scholarship.
good.
Who has that, Dan?
Northwest
Northwest
Iowa.
Iowa League of Cities.
We can get you the
Talk to
contact.
Gabby, she can get you
I'll
the
give you
information.
I do
invitation.
actually. I'm
Yep.
very interested in that,
Yeah,
actually.
you should apply for that. They
Yeah.
just attended the meeting, and $3,400 was raised.
Yeah, and I think the scholarships are
Yeah.
$500 a semester, like,
Yeah.
I need it.
yeah.
Every
It's
every
not
bit
cheap.
helps.
Okay,
So-
any other thing?
Well, I like that you said we have to have uncomfortable conversations. We do, and that's how they become more comfortable on the other side of those conversations. And, most of the time, that's what it leads to, but it just takes time to get through that. And I've always seen your passion, always. When you speak your piece, you bring that up, and I see your passion. I see it here in council. I've seen it other places that you've been at, that you've been a speaker. I see it in your social media. We're friends. And so I really do appreciate that about you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you, we
Val,
appreciate it.
thanks,
Thank you.
Tricia.
Yep, thank you.
We'll go to the consent agenda, items 3 through 14C, consider them to pass unanimously unless a separate roll call vote's requested by a council member. If you want to speak on an agenda, please come up as I read it. If you want to speak on an item not on the agenda, come up under citizen concerns. Remember to always state your name. I'll move the consent agenda.
Second.
3 is the reading of the November 14th and 18th City Council minutes. 4 is a resolution authorizing transit to accept funds in connection with the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant Program Equipment Rebate Voucher. 5 is a resolution amending resolution number 2021-0739 to update the allocation of funding from the Department of Treasury by redistributing the amounts originally set for projects.
Mayor, I have a question for Teresa. And I'm sorry I didn't get a hold of you before now. I just haven't had an opportunity because other things are going on.
Teresa Fitch, Finance Director.
Hi, Teresa.
Hey.
And you highlighted,
Yeah.
what changed, but I'm just wondering by what amounts or what was
Sure.
switched around.
I can tell you all of them, but it might be best if I send them to you too, because there's a lot of categories. I can kind of go over where they went, but I don't know that you'll grab all the different dollar amounts. So I'll
But
go over.
There are 11 that are highlighted. So
Yep.
those would have either been added to or taken
Correct.
from.
Yep. And I can send you this once because I put that together.
Okay.
Because I figured you would ask today. So there is a lot of a lot of numbers. So I'll go through them, but then I'll send them
Thank
to you
you.
guys
Okay.
too as a follow-up.
I appreciate that. Thank
Yep.
you.
But while you're there, and I
Yep.
thought it was on here today. Why am I thinking, yeah. Mm-hmm. No,
correct.
that's Stone Park Boulevard. The money for
Broken Kettle?
money for those septic tanks,
Correct.
are we, because I'm not for the 100,000, are we?
No, it's
Right
just,
now, it's removed from that.
Oh,
That was the direction I had. But if you guys decided later on in just discussion you wanted to add that, we certainly could. So that's one of the items we changed.
Okay.
So,
and the item today is just confirming the amounts, and what's
funding
before us
sources.
today is not including the 100,000. Is that
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Staff was just asking if we wanted that included, that we had to say that in council today.
Yep. Under the investment in water, sewer, and broadband areas, we broke out into 3 different categories. We had the Westland Property Management Development. We added $17,500 to that, which you will be approving tonight. And we removed that from the unspecified utility improvements for housing development. So that went down by $17,500, those 2 categories. The UV treatment, we moved $1,564,472.73 from emergency repairs to cover the balance because it was over the dollar amount. In the Bruner and Nash, the project completed, so it had $68,318 in it. We actually moved that to a project we added to this, which is the Mulberry Bridge. That's just an infrastructure. It was part of a balancing, and it was an item that we already have expenses for. This is kind of in an effort to ensure that we don't leave any dollars on the table, too. The Broken Kettle, we removed the $100,000 from that. That is moving to emergency repairs for the wastewater treatment plant, went into that category. The emergency repairs actually received several different updates. So we moved the $1,564,000 to the UV treatment, so that was out of there. But into the project, we moved $112,971 from the Douglas and Jackson drainage project. We moved $100,000 from the Broken Kettle project into that project. We moved $426,193 from the Southbridge drainage project. And we moved $589,855 from the well replacement project, as well as $563,135 from the booster station project. This project here, Tom brought something last week to you for the digester project that was about $13 million. So we knew in all those other categories we had excess that we weren't going to be able to encumber by the end of the year. So we wanted to move it into a project to ensure that we would be able to spend the funds. So then that's where you see the well replacement project. There's a change in that because that push went to the emergency fund. The Pure Straight Water replacement, we moved $333,000 to the Mulberry Bridge project, which is, you'll see down below is an added project as well. We added the Nebraska from Third to Gordon. It was in the current plan for the downtown infrastructure project. And that is being funded from the Douglas and to Jackson drainage basin. It came in well below the estimate, so we had funding there to do that. Southbridge was the amount that we moved into the emergency project. Douglas and the Douglas to Jackson drainage basin, we moved $111,000 to that, to the emergency fund, and then the $1.2 million, or $1 million, excuse me, that we moved to the Nebraska project. And then the Mulberry Bridge, earlier, like we said, $68,000 came from the Bruner and Nash, and then we moved the rest of the funding from the Douglas project.
Okay, so all this, the first deadline we have is coming up December 31?
Yes.
And
Yep.
that means what, as far as it has to be encumbered? or
Yes, it has to be promised or encumbered. So
not
that's,
Contracts don't have to be entered into yet?
yes, contracts have to be entered into and encumbered, the projects do.
Contracts have to be entered
You
into?
have to have an actual contract.
Okay,
So
so do we
that's
have all
why-
of those in place, or are we going to be seeing some coming up in December?
The only one that I know of is the unidentified utility improvements that Marty and his staff are working on. But if that item, if whatever they're working on ends up falling through, you'll see this come back again, because we'll move those funds into the wastewater treatment plant emergency repairs and digester project, because we have plenty of monies there that need to be spent. So we have like $8.7 million allocated there. That contract he has is a $13 million contract. So we're starting to move everything there, knowing that we have expenses there that we'll be able to
We
spend.
did Mulberry Bridge?
It's, Gordon?
Oh, yeah, just bid, yeah. Yep.
And then you need to send in, you send in a certificate then to the feds?
To,
To
we
have it-
do
that we have
reporting.
the contracts, yeah, that we have.
Yep, we report, and so we'll have a report at the end of December. We do a quarterly report every single quarter.
Okay. Money has to be spent, what's the deadline on that?
December 31st of 2026. So we have 2 years from now to spend it,
Okay.
which everybody assures me that will not be a problem. So-
Yeah.
Nobody has a problem cashing the check.
Right, it shouldn't be a problem, but I will send you guys that summary too.
Thanks, Teresa.
That way you
I
have it.
appreciate your walking through it, though. Thank
Teresa,
you.
while you're up here, I mean,
Yep.
just to confirm my thought process and just thinking that, you know, the news, I'm sure, is going to want to cover this tonight, and maybe have an update. And just to clarify again, you know, these are American Rescue Plan dollars from the federal government that was
Correct.
allocated to us. It's fortunate that we have the funding to be able to do these different projects, but the unfortunate side is it wasn't necessarily at any discretion to the council, any project, any plan that came before us, but there were specific categories
Correct.
that the dollars needed to fall into. And then what we did is we just allowed for that flexibility to understand as projects were completed, they would come in under budget, where we could then utilize the money that was allocated toward them to a different project.
Correct.
Or if for one reason or another, a project was deemed unable to be completed, or, you know, deemed that there was one of higher importance or anything like that, sometimes we had to move those funds around as well, all in an effort just to meet the deadline and exhaust the funds that we were given through this opportunity. But really, I mean, it's an amazing piece of legislation that allowed Sioux City to really invest in its infrastructure in a way that probably never has been done, at least not for in this fell swoop. And so it's one of those where over $40 million was invested into the infrastructure of Sioux City, which is pretty incredible.
I agree. I will say too, it's helped with our capital budget for the last couple of years, including this year. We're able to do projects instead of bonding for those in the capital budget too. So that's helped significantly for balancing purposes. And it's helping us move along with our infrastructure plan. So,
Well, you weren't born yet, but back in the day, we had what they call revenue sharing, and we got a check like this every year, $3 to $5 million. And that's how, if you drive around town and look at 30-year-old buildings, firehouses, they were built with revenue sharing. The building across the street was built with revenue sharing. You just couldn't use it for ongoing expenses. And I long for the days of revenue sharing because it allowed you to do projects that weren't necessarily going to ever get done if you didn't do that. We would never have built those. If you look, those fire stations are all about the same age, and most of that money was revenue sharing money back then, so.
Yeah.
That would definitely be helpful. We'd like that in our office, but.
The state keeps
That'd be
taking it,
nice.
at least the federal gave us.
We spend so much money just on annual maintenance that it would be, I mean, this has helped us to move forward with our plan. Yep. So, any other questions?
Thanks, Teresa.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Actions relating to annual reports, a motion accepting the Airport Board of Trustees annual report. B is a motion accepting the effective fiscal and public policy committee annual report. 7 are actions relating to finance. A is a resolution approving the tax increment finance annual certification of compliance and urban renewal report. B is a resolution certifying the tax increment financing debt. C is a resolution declaring an official intent to issue debt to reimburse the city for original expenditures paid. D is a resolution approving advances of funds for repayment of the city's urban renewal tax increment revenue funds and directing filing of the certification. 8 are actions adopting construction documents. A is a resolution adopting plans and specs for the 29th Street reconstruction project, Jones Street to Cheyenne Boulevard. B is a resolution adopting construction documents for the West Street Bridge replacement project. 9 are actions relating to agreements and contracts. A is a resolution awarding a service provider agreement to Siouxland certified testing for the new utilities office, field office building project. B is a resolution approving amendment number 2 to the consulting services agreement with JEO Consulting for the Rebecca Street reconstruction project. C is a resolution approving change order number 1 to the contract with K&S Contracting for the Airport Northeast T Hangar Development Project. D is DGR Engineering resolution approving an amendment number 3 to the consulting services agreement with DGR Engineering for the Stone Park Boulevard reconstruction project. 2 is a resolution approving a consulting services agreement with DGR Engineering for the Fairmont Street water main replacement project. 10 are actions authorizing payments. A is a resolution authorizing payment to Barclay Asphalt for the city's facilities asphalt overlay project. B is a resolution authorizing payment to G Asphalt Systems for the runway 18-36 and taxiways B, C, D, and E rehabilitation project at the airport. Actions relating to property. A is a resolution approving an offer to buy real estate and acceptance from 1888 Holdings for the runway 1331 reconstruction extension project and authorizing payment. D is a resolution inviting proposals for the lease of various parcels of farmland at the airport in the Donner Park urban renewal area, announcing the intent to accept the proposal of TKR Trucking. It's scheduling a hearing. 12 is purchasing. A is a resolution awarding a purchase order to Sioux Falls Ford for 9 Ford Police Interceptor all-wheel drive vehicles for the police department. B is a motion directing the city manager to purchase the Cone Park General Liability Insurance from Arthur J. Gallagher Risk Management Services. The motion requested is to amend the item to reflect the new total of insurance premium of $30,544.95. I'll move the amendment.
Second.
94 cents.
4 cents.
Moore,
Aye.
O'Kane,
Aye.
Shaner,
Aye.
Scott,
Aye.
Waters.
Aye.
13 are applications for beer and liquor license. I'll move to remove Ellie from the list. They don't have all of their paperwork in.
Second.
O'Kane,
Aye.
Shaner,
Aye.
Scott,
Aye.
Waters.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
14 boards, commission, and committee minutes. That concludes the consent agenda. Anybody want to be heard on any of those items? Passes 5-0. 15 is an ordinance amending Chapter 25.05 Site Development of the Municipal Code to repeal the interim automobile sales, rental, and service ordinance. The petitioners, the City of Sioux City, p and Z recommends approval. First consideration approved November 18th, 2024. I'll move second reading.
Second.
Passes 3-2. Shaner and Waters vote no. Before third reading, I guess I'd like to hear from you guys what your proposal would be. So if you would get that, that'd be great. 16 is a hearing and resolution accepting the proposal of Stanley Johns for the lease of land in the Donner Park Urban Renewal Area. The property is the T hangar at 2503 Discovery Boulevard, Unit Number 6. I'll move that.
Second.
Public hearing's now open. Anyone to be heard? Seeing none, the hearing is closed. Passes 5-0. 17 is a hearing and resolution accepting the proposal of BRE Inc. for the land in the Donner Park Urban Renewal Area and directing the city manager to negotiate a development agreement. The properties at Chautauqua Park, 2500 Chautauqua Drive. I'll move that.
Second.
Public hearing's now open. Anyone to be heard? Seeing none, the hearing is closed. Passes 5-0. 18 is a resolution authorizing the payment to Steve Harris Construction for the Broken Kettle Road Sanitary Sewer Extension Project. I'll move that.
Second.
Gordon Fair, City Engineer. Just in case you had any questions on 18.
Everything pretty straightforward, all?
I don't think so.
Passes 5-0. 19 is a resolution scheduling a hearing on the proposed connection fees for the Broken Kettle Sanitary Sewer Extension Project. I'll move that.
Second.
Passes 5-0. 20 is a resolution approving change order number 1 to the contract with H&R Construction for the new utilities field office building structure. Go ahead and move that.
Yeah, I'll move it.
Second.
Brad, I didn't have a chance to visit with you either, and I apologize, but I have a lot of questions on 20 and 21. And if I could just give you the background on how I've read it, and maybe you can help me. I need help understanding what happened and where we're headed. So in item 20, it talks about certified testing services performed some additional material testing and verified those conditions, which to me means there was a test that was done. So I'll have a question on how thorough that first test was, or that initial testing was. And then H&R Construction gave us 4 options to consider. And it was said there are additional areas of the site that will also need supplementary stabilization. And we looked, and then you pointed out the parking and the driveway areas, maybe using option number 3, which is I understood to be a little lesser expensive and lesser packing that's being done. And it was not a do not exceed amount of the $737,000. That was on 20. And then reading the letter from RML Architects, it said we included some site stabilization in the bid documents. Unfortunately, the subsoils are worse than we anticipated, and after testing the area, CTS has upped their recommendation for soils stabilization. And then that's where those 4 options are laid out in that letter. CTS identified an area within the building pad that will need option 3 in the report, and they were able to stabilize the rest of the building pad using option number 4. It said, we knew that we may run into this on this site and all along, and it looks like the worst case scenario has become a reality, and time is of the essence. And then under certified testing services review of construction, which I appreciated the report, report number 1 talked about CTS made a site visit to observe the, am I saying this right, proof roll? The proof roll procedure on the bottom of the over excavation for the approximate north half of the proposed building. And then they gave a second report, report number 2, where it said the north, they talked about the north 2/3 of the proposed building. It said CTS recommends this area be stabilized with 12 inches of 3-inch clean crushed stone and capped with 6 inches of 1.5-inch minus crushed stone on BX 224 geogrid or equivalent. The contractor should contact CTS to observe stabilization efforts prior to fill replacement. So I guess, and then these similar reports were attached for agenda item number 21. Things were worse than they anticipated. Can you kind of walk through how this all came up? And because we had a testing done, and I've had excellent results with certified testing. They do excellent work. So I don't want to sound critical. I'm just trying to figure out what happened and why are we looking at potentially, what is it, $1 million, the $333,000 plus the not to exceed the $734,000.
Brad Pitts, Utilities Director. Yeah, that's correct. Once the over excavation was completed under the building structure, it was found that there was higher moisture content and the building area needed further stabilization. Staff gave the contractor the go-ahead to complete that portion before the incoming rain damaged the soils any further. So that was the $333,000 portion. After that, it was found that the soils in the parking and drive portions are very similar. That portion to be completed would have taken the change order over the 10% amount, which needs council approval. So we stopped the project at that point. The change order is in front of you. I'm not an expert in that, but we do have staff here from both RML Architects and CTS. If they want to come forward and explain to you what's before us this evening, we can certainly have them come up.
Okay. That would be helpful for me. I don't know about the mayor and the rest of the council, but that would be helpful. So it's basically the moisture that was further down in the site location that was discovered after the other testing?
Yeah, once they
or the
completed
initial testing had been
yeah,
done?
once they completed the over excavate, well, as far as the testing that was up front, I'll have them speak on that. But once the over excavation was complete and the proof roll was done, the soil was pumping, which means that it was not stable enough for the building to hold the building on its own, even with controlled fill. So we decided to stabilize it with the geogrid to get it to where it needs to be. I believe we got testing back today stating that the building portion is past compaction.
Yeah,
testing.
I think they have it
Need your
stable.
names, guys.
Sorry. Jed McInerney with Certified Testing Services.
Mike Neswick with RML Architects.
To my understanding, they have the subgrade stabilized in the building area. They've started placing fill with passing results and no issues once they have it stabilized.
The building pad itself is stabilized and done. I have pictures here if you want to see.
So what was the 2/3 of the building site in the north half of the building site that was in some of the reports?
So our report indicated that most areas would need to be stabilized because of the subgrade below the fill was really high in moisture, really soft. So our report recommended that it be stabilized. Some options for stabilization are geogrid and rock, remove and replace the soft areas, The problem with that on this site is the deeper they went, the more likely it would stay soft and wet. We're also knew with our report that they were going to have a high water table that was going to have to be dealt with. Other methods of stabilization would be to potentially leave the site open to dry, which is not the time of year for that. The timing would not be helpful, but in some circumstances it can be. But as far as the stabilization, we knew it was going to be unstable, so we recommended including stabilization for any bid items. We also knew that if it was going to be unstable, the best way to do it would be geogrid and rock. And some of that you can only really find out till you have it open. This is a very varied site from one end to the other. Between we had fill with rubble anywhere from 7 feet to the full depth of our borings on the northwest corner. And the fill itself was not placed well. It consisted of rubble. So that was what we tried to address in our report.
Have you seen this before in other projects?
Yes. I would say that the extent of the fill and rubble is pretty extensive, more than you would hope to see. But it's not uncommon for a site to be unstable based on the natural materials. High moistures, low blow counts, and you're dealing with riverbed material, and it did have, it's not uncommon to see unstable areas.
Where was the moisture coming from then? I mean, these are truly questions because I don't get into that kind of construction or that level, but
yeah.
Where would the moisture be coming from, or what was causing that?
There's a natural water table. Some of it was perched in some of the material with rubble in it, but we also had a water table. I believe it was 7 feet down and in other areas. So you're going to have high moisture with the materials, and the materials themselves, even when they're not in the water table, had high moistures. So you're mainly dealing with clay material, and we saw moistures of 40%, and that material, if it was naturally more firm and unyielding, would have a moisture of 18. So very high moistures are an indication that you may have stability issues. So that's why we tried to address it in the report.
So was some of that initial, the initial testing that you did, so that was in there with the initial testing?
All of our testing indicated that, yes.
Okay. Well, I'm glad we discovered it when we did instead of having the building, sitting there on it.
Yeah.
But I was just trying to understand how the before picture and the after picture, how that happened.
Sure.
Why it happened.
You mean a change in what?
With the additional work with the additional work that needs to be done.
I guess I would say that we tried to indicate that in the report, that we anticipated most areas would be unstable.
Yeah, and the report suggested that the architect put something in site stabilization. So we did. We met with the city staff and everything, and we decided to put a certain amount of square footage in there for site stabilization, and then we took a unit price per square foot to do the geogrid and 12 inches of rock. But there were areas we ended up having to use when they started proof rolling, it pumped more than what they anticipated.
Okay.
So we had to use a heavier geogrid, and in some places, we had to use the larger 3-inch rock, 12 inches, and then an 1.5 inch minus cap on that of 6 inches. So when we did that, we ended up taking, and you can see it on the change order item, we ended up getting a credit for everything that was put in the building, in the base bid. So we credited that back, and then we have the letter from H&R here has basically lists 5 different options of stabilization. One was the base bid stabilization, which is $6.80 a square foot. Well, we couldn't use any of that. They ended up using a combination of 3 in the option 3 was in the worst area, and that's $10.98 a square foot. and then the rest of it was in option 4, which was $7.24 square foot. So we don't know, I mean, we assume that over in the parking lot, no excavation has been done in the parking lot area yet. But we assume that we're going to run into the same stuff. I have pictures of the debris and all that kind of stuff if you want to.
What was the
See it.
rubble?
What's that?
What was the rubble?
The site had been previously owned, from my understanding, by a demolition contractor in Sioux.
Say Myron Olson, anybody
Yes.
should have known there was that rubble in there. I mean,
And it shows in the soils report. You know, we've had 3 soils reports on this site.
I mean, I don't know how you missed that rubble. J. Myron Olson
We didn't miss the rubble. We
We're
took it
paying-
out.
paying for it now, though. I mean,
No, the base bid right now has removed, even in the parking lot area, has removing all that rubble down to an elevation of 1096. The new floor elevation of the building is 1106. So we're taking it down 10 feet below the floor line, which gets, if you look at the soils report, gets most of the rubble. They found pockets, I believe, of rubble in the building area that was a little lower. You know, we did, there were 8 borings in the building, which is 46,000 square foot, and 7 borings in the paving, which is 54,000 square foot.
point is this, if it's still rubble, that's part of what we ran into and why we're building a new utility garage.
Right, but this was not a dump, it's rubble, and we're taking the rubble out underneath the paving and the building. And that's in the base bid. Taking the rubble out was already there, it's already in the base bid number, Bob.
Okay.
So the parking area, I ask silly questions once in a while, but the parking area, if we didn't do that, what would it be long-term?
Okay,
Would
if
we
you
see a
reject,
sinking parking lot?
you reject, and it'll be a combination of me and Jed here. If you reject change order number 2 and don't stabilize the parking lot, what's in the base bid is to remove the rubble down to that 1096 level. That should get most all of the rubble out of there. If they find deeper pockets, they'll have to dig that out. And then we go from between 7 to 9 feet of compacted fill, engineered fill on top of that. And there's no guarantees that that engineered fill, from what and maybe Jed could more speak on that, but it may or may not bridge the poor soils down below there.
Yeah, so our report indicated that the only way to ensure that you might not have some distress or movement below the pavement would be to remove all the fill. Now, there's fill down to the depth of our borings. All the fill was bad, so we don't know how that fill is going to behave over time if you put compacted fill on top of it. But obviously, with it being as deep as it is and extensive as it is, we put a recommendation in our report with the understanding that there could be some movement where we discuss 3 feet of good structural fill and still stabilizing what you can with geogrid rock or opening it up or removing and replacing. But what we've found to be the case with fill that's bad, it's difficult to be sure that it's going to bridge over the really soft material. Whereas with natural material, we know and can anticipate how it's going to react. But with this poor fill, it's hard to say. If that were to be the case where a majority of the rubble is removed, that helps. But we still run into the situation like we did in the building. Below the fill is a really high moisture natural material that may need to be stabilized. Our recommendation would be to stabilize unstable areas, because if you place fill on unstable soft material, it can continue to stay unstable as you go up, and you may have failing results in densities because it's moving too much, and then you run the risk of getting to bottom of pavement elevation and it's still rutting, pumping, moving around. So those are what we tend to see in these scenarios.
what's the parking lot portion of this? What, I mean,
How many square
we're almost
feet?
paying more for fill than we are for the paving.
The building is 46,351 square feet. The paving is 54,277.
But what's the parking of the concrete portion? Do you have any idea what that amount is?
I
As
don't
far
have a
as
separate
cost, is
number
that
on
what
it.
you're saying? Or
Well, yeah, I mean, you might be able to, I mean, the Transit Plaza Shopping Center has 15 feet of asphalt in it in places, but that was all, that wasn't building material, that was garbage that continues to rot.
Is this, yeah, is this drawing, would this help us if you put that on the screen? This was in your
Yeah, I've got,
materials.
let's see.
Would you be able to show us where the building is and where the parking?
You know, originally, we had the building closer to, there was a scattergun approach sites or soils report done when you guys bought the property. And then when we originally, we've been working on this building since 2017. And so we originally placed the building, they wanted it closer to Steuben Street, so we would do the least amount of paving as possible. So we designed the site to put it close to Steuben Street. And what happened was, we called certified, had them test it where we were putting the building, and the soils were worse over there. So we moved the building 150 feet to the east, and the soils are better there, but still not great, you know. This is the area here.
Danny,
Do I need to
can we get it
Yes.
projected?
Becca, project the table. She has to do it from the back. I'm sorry. I will go.
I mean, the problem is, for me, is it's a whole lot of money
It is. And
that we should have overbid. And the other problem for me is this wasn't bid as an item. So now the contractor, God bless him, I'm sure he's being really honest, but we all know change orders make money for two people, engineers and contractors. And we don't, you know, if we'd have known this, why didn't we bid these as alternatives if there was any doubt? Because otherwise you could have an unbalanced bid here. I mean, the bids were that close that you may have had another contractor.
Yeah,
I know
there
it
was-
doesn't make any difference, but to not have specific bids for this type of stuff doesn't make sense to me.
all of the contractors put in a unit price per square foot to do the BX 1100 grid,
I
field grid.
understand that. They had
And the
to,
12
bid
inches of
item.
rock, yeah. So we did competitively
But they didn't have
bid that
7 and
too.
8 or whatever, they didn't have that.
Right. Those were the options that were developed after we proof-rolled the site, yeah.
That's why I wish we would have bid them at least as items. If we knew the soils were that bad, why didn't we bid alternates with that in mind?
Well, you mean take,
Well, you do alternates.
Unit prices, yeah,
You do
unit
unit
prices.
prices all the time on different options. We do it all the time around here.
when you look at this plan right here,
Where-
we
yeah,
didn't know that this part was gonna have to use the heavier grid, that part that is hatched in there. That was the heavy grid and the bigger rock and the 18 inches rather than 12 inches. That is option number 3, the $10.98 square foot option. So the entire parking lot, which is all this area here, out to the street, and this one right over here, that the contractor has priced up on change order number 2, assuming that they have to use the worst-case scenario there because they wanted a not-to-exceed number. If we're able to use the base bid stabilization, that 737 drops to 456. You know, so I mean, there's a lot of difference between those options there. And we have a unit price now per square foot on all those options. And until they excavate that out and certified can go there and test it, we don't know how much of each one of these options that we're gonna have. So the 737,812, that is assuming worst-case scenario on the whole thing. And so
Steuben is off to the, what direction? West? Is
Steuben's over, yeah.
that 150 feet over is where?
We
Steuben-
moved the building 150 feet east of where we originally had it
East.
because we tested the soils there and they were really bad. There was a soil boring just north of this drive over here. Where we had the building was clear over here. There was a soil boring here on this side over here that was, they never got out of the construction debris in the 20 feet that they drilled. There was another one just on the other side of this drive that was, the construction debris was only down 4 feet. So
There was an old drainage ditch by the Sioux's ballpark. And that's why Myron Olson bought it, that's where buildings went when he tore them down back in the day.
I do have pictures here of what the debris is, if you want to see any of them. I can put them underneath the,
Sure, it's building materials.
yeah, it is, and there's a layer of them, and I've got, so.
No, you're okay. I guess maybe, Mayor, if I'm following what you're saying, and that's a dangerous thought to think I would be, but we'll see, is
I don't think you are, but go ahead.
yeah, exactly right. Yeah, no kidding. No, I mean, I think that it's unfortunate of where we are. Obviously, none of us would have anticipated, would have hoped to be in this position. And you're saying that the numbers, obviously, a part of it is to stabilize what we know, and then part of it is not to exceed so that we can go up to and hope it's not worst case scenario, in which case it will go down. And again, you have to rely on your contractor and, you know, the people overseeing it, that we're not going excessive with that. But I think to your point that you're making, Mayor, as far as those bids and what we should have done, could have done, is not lessons that we can learn now in the present, but just saying moving forward, we need to learn from these things, that especially if we knew that it was over there, you know, and it was bad soil to the west, you know, by Steuben, that we could have anticipated and we should have included those alternates of maybe materials or something like that. I'm not sure, and the mayor is far more familiar with that than I am, but I'm just saying, I think that the way I'm seeing this, reading this, and following the discussion is it's a lesson moving forward that we just need to be proactive as we can, so that we're fair to different contractors or fair to different things moving forward.
We followed what was in the soils report. The soils report called for the BX 1100 and
Yeah.
ended up having to use the heavier ones.
Yeah.
So it was never in the soils report. I was never aware of it, but once we got there, that's when we found out
Oh,
we
yeah,
had to use the other.
correct.
So,
And I'm not saying like we
Right.
bid it with what we were anticipating.
Right.
But I'm saying based off of what we knew in the area, maybe we should have anticipated more and we could have at least bid those
Possibly.
materials.
Yeah,
You know, you never
hindsight.
know.
Hindsight
And you don't want
2020.
to put the bid out there with a million different alternates that are possibilities and you don't know them. But if you
No,
could
but
have
if you
made
would've
if
bid
you
with
could have made
three-
an
three
educated
different
guess.
ones, Alex, you would have got to pick and choose, and you would have known which contractor had the potential to be low bid.
Agreed.
We don't know that now.
Agreed. And I'm saying you could have maybe anticipated some of this on this job, but not every job is going to be as clear because you wouldn't have done as many borings maybe or something, but I understand what you're saying. And I hope that's as clear as mud, as the mayor would say, that I kind of understand. I think it's just lessons moving forward that we need to do our due diligence of there in case there is money savings by going with a different contractor. But now we're in this situation and we have to kind of decide, you know, is this, we're pot committed to wanting to develop this master plan and say this is the best move moving forward and advantageous for the city. And so we kind of have to do that.
Well, the problem now that we know this is I don't think you're ever going to build a building to the west. And that's one of the reasons we bought this site, was if Mike got money to build a new maintenance garage for the transit, it was going here.
yeah, to the north of where we're building now.
What's that?
To the north of where we're building now, yeah, the rest of the site.
West.
We're
Closer to Steuben
far-
or no?
Yeah, we're as far west as we can go on the
Well,
site.
then it would be east, wouldn't it? Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Okay.
We're not going to get to build anything else in here. That's just going to be a storage yard from here on out.
Well, is it too late to amend this and knock it back down to what Mike was, Mike was referring to, the lesser of the evils, and say to the
Not till you-
400 something
Not till you excavate it.
Yeah, because you wouldn't know.
Yeah, you wouldn't know if that would work or not. See, it may be a combination of all these 4 or 5 different scenarios. Because if you get into an area that, and maybe I'll let Jed talk about that, he knows more about soils than I forgot.
Yeah, we knew that there were going to be unstable areas, so we tried to give some recommendations there. If there's some variation or combination of removing rubble material and not removing all the bad fill, it would be in our report, we discuss the understanding that there could be some movement. It's like I said, it's really hard to know what that fill is going to do on that bad fill. So I guess if there's a combination of removing the rubble in some areas, you would get below the rubble. Our recommendation would still be to remove concentrations of rubble, whether it's brick or concrete, and then try to stabilize that subgrade, and then place some structural fill. We had their discussion about 3 feet, but if there's more of that, to remove the rubble as a way to get it uniform and probably more simple for the contractor to know where they're going. That would be an option too. We would just note that there's some potential for movement, but.
You'll be
And
on
the-
site, you'll be on site to actually see
That's-
that, won't you? That's what
Yeah,
I
so-
would want with CTS.
The idea is to have a soils technician on site to help identify these areas that are particularly bad. Where we were in the building area, there was an area where there was water coming in. You probe with a rod, and it went the full depth of the rod as if to say there was no resistance, so it's very soft. So we provided recommendations on how to stabilize something that soft. And you may have areas that don't need to be stabilized, and you may have areas that do. With this non-uniform of a site and varied, it's very difficult to say whether you would have an area open and it may be stable. And as I mentioned, we don't know when they're going to do construction, but there's a possibility of leaving something open and it drying out over the weekend, but the time of year is not conducive to that. So it's difficult to put a number on stabilization, and that's why we just wanted everybody to know that there's definitely going to be unstable areas. Obviously, I can't speak to bid items or anything. We're just trying to point out the concerns for the site and then address ways to fix that.
And I just want to make sure that y'all know the rubble is being removed down to that elevation, which.
At that base bid.
In the base bid,
Right.
what's already in what was bid. So all that dirt and all the dirt that goes on top of whatever we go in there is already in the base bid. All that. It's
I'm glad
just,
you clarified that,
it's just the stabilization.
right?
So if you put what's in the base bid on top of what's down there, you never know if it's going to work or not.
I have a
That's why their
multi-dollar question.
recommendation, yeah, that's why their recommendation of stabilizing it is,
Do we have any estimate of how many years of stabilization this will kind of buy us or get us without it, the site being compromised again because of
Sure.
anything that might be happening?
If you're going to try to stabilize poorly placed fill, if it's stable, we'd anticipate to remain stable on that material.
This is a solution that's long-term.
Yes, we'd say that if you were able to, now, if you're still on rubble and debris, it's hard to say that there might not be future movement because you're removing material with low volume and replacing it with a heavier material that's compacted. So it can be difficult to say what that might do over time, but that's one trade-off of trying to stabilize fill and placing fill on bad fill.
which is the reason why we're taking the debris out.
Yes.
This has been real helpful with your explanation.
Sure.
wish it wouldn't have happened, but then again.
Why?
But I want it done, I mean, I want to see it done right so we don't have settling issues, or, as the mayor pointed out, the building we're trying to get out of now, that's been a huge problem for us. We just don't want to have the same thing. So that was a good question, how long that's going to.
Next time, though, don't sell me that your estimate was lower than what, the bids came in lower than your estimate, because the real test of what a building costs is when 3 contractors bid within a few $100,000, your estimate.
I threw $1 million on top of my estimate for what we might run into, and so I didn't.
All right.
That's great.
Thank you.
So much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Sure.
Study that.
Yeah, I've been studying it. Thanks. So I got my directions wrong.
You got to vote.
I thought that was west. This is on 20, isn't it?
Passes 5-0. 21 is a resolution approving change order number 2 to the contract with H&R Construction for the remaining subgrade stabilization for the new utility field office building project. I'll move that.
Second?
I would hope, as soon as you guys know, just because we're approving this, I would hope that you would let us know so we know where this is coming in. Passes 5-0. Citizen concerns. Are there any citizens to be heard? None? We'll go to Mr. O'Kane.
Let's see. Nothing this week. We got a busy week, coming off of another busy week. Luckily, we've got the holidays in sight, though. I'm gonna just count my blessings.
We should do that. Ms. Shaner.
I just want to make one comment, and it reminds me when we have our 2 applicants here. One was re-upping for the Building and Housing Code Board, the other for the Inclusive Sioux City. And things that really caught my attention when they spoke was stepping up, spending time, even small amounts make a difference. We've got a lot of boards, we got a lot of committees, we have some openings. So even if it's just 1 hour a month, your input makes a difference. It really does. And so they said it best to say they don't mind stepping up, they don't mind spending some time, they like to be heard, they like to hear about what's going on in the community, they like to offer advice to council. So I just want everyone to give it some thought. Go to our website, look to see what openings we have. You may find something that's of great interest to you, and we would appreciate any kind of support that you can give.
Moving on, what I would say is I wanted to talk about just a couple of things. The first one is a citizen concern that was relayed to me that I'm going to pass along. I haven't wrote the email yet, but plan to do so just to city staff to ask for their assistance. There seems to be a lot of activity in the Grandview Park parking lot areas, a lot of trash, a lot of contraband, just different things. So I'm going to be reaching out to Matt Salvatore, just asking if we can continue to do what we can to make sure that there's adequate trash receptacles, that we're cleaning that area, but then also having patrol, reaching out to the chief of police just to see if we can increase patrol up there in that area, just so people can kind of stay on top of it. I just had a citizen that reached out because she regularly walks her dog up in that area and is finding quite a bit of different things. And we just want to stem that behavior and remind people that you need to use trash receptacles or recycling receptacles, and an option of just throwing it on the ground, especially in these public parks, really is to the detriment of so many in our entire community, because it's a reflection on us, and I just really want everyone to step up and own that, so that we can all do our part. But I really just wanted to share that at least I'm going to be following up with those individuals, and hopefully we can see some action and curb that activity in the future. The second thing that I wanted to bring up was I just wanted to share with the council, recently, in one of my EFAB meetings, we were talking about the different projects or things coming to the convention center, to the Tyson, and getting the update. And if you're aware or not aware, Sterling actually held a huge event down at the convention center. They brought in 380 of their team members from all across the country, and in fact, some of the speakers were coming from across the globe. And we were talking Dell executives being flown in for speeches, all different kinds of things. And it was hosted at our convention center. And I know that we all felt a pressure to not only roll out the red carpet, but make sure that our new management group did a good job down there and represented us well, because we wanted to make a good impression. It's a local company that is invested in our community, and we want to keep them committed to not only staying in our community, but also utilizing our local resources, such as our convention center. And so I followed up. I sent an email to one of the owners of the company just asking if I could get a report on what she thought went well, how it overall was handled, and just what any feedback was, if there was any. And she told me that this was, I believe I have this right, I think she said this was the 11th year they've done this conference, and they haven't been at the convention center in quite some time, if I remember right. And she said that this was by far the best that it has ever went, and they were absolutely blown away. And they were already discussing with the OVG team about booking for next year, because they were so excited about how it went, how attentive the staff was, how great the food was, all the different options. The only feedback they had was that they wished they could have been in a day before to set up, and they weren't able to do so because there was a different event happening. So it's one of those where I just want to commend the OVG 360 team, especially down at the convention center, for stepping up and making that company feel just so taken care of. I think that that's an exciting update that we've made to that facility, and it proves to be effective and really going the right direction now. So I'm excited by that. So the other thing that I would say is another thing that I saw on social media, and I kind of shared after following up with staff, I shared with others, but if anyone's heard, there was a Cirque show at the Orpheum, and there were some frustrations that the lobby. Lots of frustrations that the lobby had become exceedingly full. I wasn't there. I didn't experience it. I just saw someone tag me, or I saw that my friend was posting and frustrated with that. And so I followed up with city staff and was kind of informed that our city staff was somewhat equally frustrated, that they were told that they would be able to open theater doors at a certain time, and due to security checks, that was pushed back. So then people were allowed to enter the lobby but not enter the theater, and it just led to an extraordinarily packed lobby area where people weren't allowed to get their seats, but city staff's hands were, or OVG's staff's hands were somewhat tied in allowing them in, and they were disappointed as well. But I think I've spoke with at least that staff that was there and emphasized to them that I think communication can be better, and we need to make sure that we're ensuring safety of those patrons and at least letting them know what those updates are, because it appeared that what happened was pretty unfortunate.
I was there.
What was it?
Cirque had it was one of the Broadway shows. It was supposed to start at 4 o'clock. And you talk about safety. I still don't know what the reason was. I wish they would have announced that at the beginning, why we weren't able to be seated till 4:10. It takes 15 to 20 minutes to be seated. But it was the lobby area. I was really concerned about how packed the lobby area was, and whether that was safe for everybody. They couldn't get in. Does anybody know why
Well, that's what I
there
was,
was
yeah.
a delay?
That's what I was saying was, the CERC staff was conducting a security check and it ran longer than they told our staff. And they said that doors needed to remain locked until that was completed. And so they didn't allow our staff to unlock the doors until they gave them the green light.
Well, the front doors, the entrance doors were unlocked. You could go in, but you couldn't go find your seat and sit down.
Correct, into the theater.
I just told him to call the mayor. No. I didn't say that, but seriously, I did say if the fire marshal were to walk in to what we had in the lobby, we'd all been in trouble. I mean, it was, and they were asking me, why the delay? Why the delay? And I couldn't, no one knew what the delay was. It would have been nice if they would have announced at the beginning, Alex.
And that's what I was,
That there was a security check, and that's what they were doing.
Yep.
Because it started late, and it wasn't, yeah.
And that's what I relayed to staff, is that communication
Yeah.
needs to be better about this.
Luckily, hopefully that's a one-off and.
Well, that's the first
just
time
happened.
I can remember that
Yeah.
ever happening. And there's just has to be, there has to be a plan B, a plan C done so that the staff will know what to do when someone does it. Because I learned a long time ago from a friend of mine who booked these shows at the old auditorium. He said, the performers call the shots. They decide what they want, and they decide when they're going to start.
Yep.
That was, it just put a damper on what could have been a really nice Broadway show. But Bruce Miller gave it a positive write-up. But next time, if they could somehow just announce why there was that delay. And some of the seniors, it was tough on them. They're looking for a place to sit down. It was just, it wasn't good.
Yeah, my age, that's why I don't go. So what else you got?
Yeah, well, I gave your ticket to a friend that I had for you, but I'll still pick you up for the art center festivities. No, I have
If
nothing.
I'm not at the house, don't worry about it. Just go without me.
I'm done.
You're done.
Yes, thank you.
All right, well, I want to take a minute. Well, first of all, Sterling is a great company. I wish we had 10 more just like them. I would agree with that. But thank local businesses that gave Dan and I a lot of things. Julie,
Auction items.
Alex helped get them and that, because the auction raised for scholarships for the Northwest Iowa League raised at least $3,405. I think there's some stuff they had to build. That was the cash they took in that night, and they only normally give out 2,000 in scholarships, and it looks like they'll give 3 or 4 this year. So it was a good night, and we had fun, and that kind of money came in a whole lot because the businesses in Sioux City are very supportive of that, so we need to thank them for that. I move we adjourn.
Second. I only had one Shirley Temple.
Oh, actually, I forgot to mention is the holiday lighted parade. That's why I'm dressed like
Yeah.
this. I should have announced that
Shaner.
actually to that, yeah.
Thanks, Jed.
Scott,
Aye.
Waters,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
O'Kane.
What do you say? Well, I thought it was a lump sum bid, but I just wanted to make sure.
And it was kind of a different one because we had to separate it out if we were using certain.
Part 3 in Texas Center.
Yep.
What's that for?
Retreat.